Checo Pérez is probably the most disrespected driver on the F1 grid in 2024. His performance obviously doesn't help, but does he really deserve all this disrespect? The answer is no, and I'm going to prove it to you with some numbers. The Mexican is currently in the hottest seat in the category, with his being Max Verstappen's teammate at Red Bull, and he's definitely not the first victim of this situation. Daniel Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly, and Alex Albon also felt the pressure of meeting the team's expectations while competing against the Dutchman. And it doesn't stop just at Red Bull. In recent F1 history, less capable drivers have been crushed by world champions. But the average sports fan's memory is short, and Pérez is almost treated like the worst driver Red Bull has ever had. So the question is Checo really the worst driver among Verstappen's recent teammates? Did he really deserve the public scorn? These are the questions this video will answer. Not that it's right, but traditionally, there's always at least one driver per season who becomes the butt of internet jokes. This spot has been filled by Logan Sargent, the American rookie, Nikita Mazepin, affectionately known as Mazespin for his spins, Nicolas Latifi, the man who decided the 2021 championship, and many other misunderstood heroes. All of these were clearly drivers with below average abilities and were also judged for racing in less competitive cars. In Pérez's case, unlike the others, the joke stemmed more from unmatched expectations with a car capable of fighting for titles rather than the Mexican's ability itself. After all, even before joining Red Bull, Pérez had already built a solid career in Formula 1, including one of the most spectacular wins of the century, which was his triumph in the last race of 2020. Checo has become an easy target mainly because in over 3 years he has never really threatened Max Verstappen or at least kept up with him, which culminated in the risk of harming the 2024 Constructors' Championship with the rise of other teams that weren't a challenge in 2022 and 2023. In those years, Verstappen almost won the Constructors' Championship on his own, giving Red Bull's dominance, and this basically gave the Mexican a free pass to escape from more serious criticism, despite the lingering impression that the champion team was missing one driver. But setting that aside, is patience shorter with Pérez than with his predecessors? It's not very straightforward to compare in a sport like F1, where most athletes don't compete under the same conditions. But in this specific case, we're talking about the same team, Red Bull, and drivers who had the same common opponent, Verstappen. Sure, each one raced in a team under different contexts, but using the Dutchman as a benchmark, we can get an idea of how far Pérez is really from expectations. If we look at Pérez's last two predecessors who had a full season at Red Bull, Daniel Ricciardo and Alex Albon, the Mexican's performance isn't that far off. Ricciardo was clearly the best, scoring 41% of Red Bull points in 2018, while Albon scored 37% in 2020. Pérez, on the other hand, scored 40% in 2022 and 33% in 2021 and 2023. Still, he seems to be the most questioned among them. And here's where a common myth among F1 fans comes in: that the teammates of Max Verstappen after Daniel Ricciardo are a disaster, which is far from being an absolute truth. So I agree that Gasly, Albon, and Pérez aren't the top talents on the grid, but the question is, they weren't hired to be. All of them shook hands with Christian Horner with the mission to be Verstappen's sidekicks, even though some had better future expectations than the others. And if we analyze the scoring percentages of other drivers considered second drivers in recent years, we see a fluctuation between 30% and 40% of the points scored. Exactly the percentage seen from Max's Red Bull teammates who managed to complete at least one full season. Valtteri Bottas, for example, who might be the best wingman in history of the sport, one of the drivers with most podiums in F1, also didn't exceed 40% contribution in his last 2 years with Mercedes. In 2021, he scored 36% of the team's points, and in 2020 he scored 39%. Definitely close to Pérez's performance. Going back a bit more, in Vettel's last title run with Red Bull in 2013, Mark Webber's contribution was also within this magic number, 33% of the points. Despite a few exceptions, this is the norm. When you hire a driver with the expectation to fill a support role, the usual contribution is between 30% and 40%, and that's what Checo delivers. Probably for this reason, Red Bull decided to renew his contract at the beginning of 2024. Why risk bringing a new support driver if the current one is at least delivering the expected results for the position he occupies? Who guarantees that Carlos Sainz would do much better? Or Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda, Liam Lawson? Absolutely all potential replacements for Pérez would come with similar expectations. And this is the case. It's better to stick with what you already have. Bottas' early years at Mercedes might have set unreal expectations in people's minds about what a so-called support driver is supposed to do. But that was the exception, not the norm. The real issues making Pérez a problem for Red Bull are different, specifically two. First, the abnormal financial damage Checo has been causing in 2024 due to crashes. An argument I personally don't see many F1 fans using online, but it weighs heavily because it severely affects the development of the car that clearly is in decline this season. Specifically now that the team doesn't have Adrian Newey around to fix their problems. And second, of course the neighbor's grass seems greener than ever. Ferrari, McLaren and Mercedes now have drivers who don't have very glaring technical differences. And if we think about it, Pérez, at least until the summer break, was the only driver from the top 4 teams who hadn't won a single race. Even Lando Norris and Piastri, who had never won before, had their first wins, and our favorite Mexican lagged behind. And this is obviously more noticeable to fans than a spreadsheet of car repair costs. Up to the summer break of 2024, Pérez scored 32% of Red Bull's points in the Constructors' Championship. Technically, he's still within the acceptable range for second drivers, but of course, Verstappen's performance will always make him look worse than he actually is. So yes, we can say that Checo is a victim of unfair treatment. And even though I would probably choose to fire Pérez if I were Christian Horner, I can understand why the Red Bull boss would opt to keep him. That's it for today. The timer's up, and that's your motor capsule of the day. My name is Kyle, and that's my opinion. But as always, I want to hear yours. Leave a comment about what do you think of Pérez as a driver. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the like button. We're new here, and we're gonna need all the help we can get. Here you will find this type of F1 videos, so if you like this content, please stay. See you again soon, thanks and goodbye.